Hey everyone, Dom here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a story that legitimately made my blood boil. What do you do when your own flesh and blood stabs you in the back, drains your life savings, and then publicly humiliates you just to prop up the family's golden child? Grab a drink and settle in, because we are diving into a nuclear revenge story titled, At My Dad's 70th Birthday, He Mocked Me saying my only son bought me a car, unlike you. Let's get right into it. I'm James. I'm 48 years old, and at my own father's 70th birthday party, in front of everyone we've ever known, he called me a disappointment and a disgrace. The party was a picture-perfect slice of suburban Americana, held in the sprawling backyard of my childhood home. This was the house my parents, David and Helen, had lived in for 50 years, the lawn I'd mowed 1,000 times, the oak tree I'd fallen out of when I was 8. The air smelled of nostalgia. Charcoal from the grill, freshly cut grass, and the faint, sweet scent of my mother's prize-winning roses. Neighbors, who had seen me grow from a clumsy kid into a middle-aged man, mingled with relatives I saw only at weddings and funerals. On the surface, it was a celebration. But for me, it was an ordeal. My wife, Sarah, sensed it. As we got out of the car, she reached for my hand, her fingers warm and reassuring against mine. "Just breathe," she whispered. "We don't have to stay long." She knew these events were less a family gathering and more a public performance, a stage where my father was the director, and I was perpetually cast in the role of the supporting character who never quite got his lines right. My gift felt heavy in its bag. It wasn't flashy, not like the kinds of things my younger brother, Leo, would give. It was a simple, dark wood frame, elegant and understated. Inside was a photograph of my dad as a boy, maybe 10 years old, standing proudly beside his own father, my grandfather, a man I barely knew but had always admired. The original photo had been tucked away in a dusty album, creased and faded. It had taken me 3 months to find a specialist who could painstakingly restore it, bringing the black and white image back to life. I thought it was a gift of legacy, a nod to the man my father once was, the man I wished he still could be. I thought it might actually mean something to him. We stepped into the backyard and were immediately absorbed. My Aunt Carol descended upon us, her smile as wide and brittle as her lacquered hair. "James, darling, you made it. Your father will be so pleased." Her eyes flickered over me, a quick, dismissive appraisal. My brother, Leo, saw us from across the lawn. He was standing next to a monstrously large, black SUV parked right on the grass as if it were a trophy in a car show. A giant, ridiculous red bow was stuck to the hood. He sauntered over, a smug grin on his face. "Hey, big brother," he said, clapping me on the shoulder a little too hard. "Good of you to show up. Didn't want to miss the big show." I didn't know then what he meant by the big show, but I had a sinking feeling. Then came the moment of truth. My father, David, his face ruddy from beer and the afternoon sun, climbed onto the small patio that served as a makeshift stage. He tapped a spoon against his glass, and the yard fell into a respectful hush. "I want to thank you all for coming," he began, his voice booming with self-satisfaction. 70 years. It's a long time to be on this earth." He paused, letting the polite applause wash over him. His eyes scanned the crowd, and they landed on me. For a moment, his expression was unreadable. Then, a cruel little smile curled his lips as he turned and gestured dramatically toward Leo and the SUV. "And I have to give a special thank you." Dad's voice dripped with a syrupy pride that made my stomach clench. "To my son, my only son, Leo, who bought me this incredible machine." The applause was deafening this time. Leo took a bow, soaking it in. My father wasn't finished. He turned his gaze back to me, the smile gone, replaced by a look of profound disdain. "And James is here, too," he announced, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. The crowd quieted, sensing the shift. "He's never done anything for me, but at least he showed up." He took a long swig of his beer, his eyes locked on mine. "Your brother bought me a car. And you've got nothing to offer. Just a shameful disgrace. A disappointment." The silence that followed was absolute, a vacuum where all the air and joy had been sucked out. I could feel the weight of 100 pairs of eyes on me, a mixture of pity, embarrassment, and morbid curiosity. Sarah's grip on my hand was so tight I thought my bones might crack. But I didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. I didn't flinch. I didn't shout. I didn't defend myself. I simply smiled. A calm, quiet, empty smile. I raised my plastic cup in a mock toast. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said, my voice surprisingly clear and steady in the heavy silence. I then turned to Sarah, my smile never wavering. "I think we're done here," and we walked away. I didn't look back, but I could feel my father's confused, angry glare on my back. They all probably thought I was weak, that I was running away with my tail between my legs. They thought they had finally, irrevocably broken me. They had no idea that my quiet smile was not an act of surrender. It was a declaration of war. The car was an oasis of silence after the suffocating atmosphere of the party. For the first 10 minutes of the drive, the only sound was the low hum of the engine and Sarah's soft, ragged breathing beside me. She wasn't a crier, not by nature. She was tough, pragmatic. But when I glanced over, I saw the silent tears tracking down her cheeks. Her jaw set in a line of pure fury. "I'm going to kill him," she finally whispered, her voice trembling with a rage she was bottling up on my behalf. "I swear to God, James, I am going to turn this car around and I am going to run him over. How could he? How could he be so monstrously cruel?" I kept my eyes fixed on the ribbon of asphalt ahead, my hands gripping the steering wheel at 10 and 2. A perfect, steady grip that betrayed none of the seismic chaos erupting inside me. "Because that's who he is, Sarah," I said, and my voice was flat, devoid of emotion. The initial shock, the hot sting of public humiliation, had already cooled and hardened into something else. Cold, heavy certainty. This wasn't a sudden outburst. This was the crescendo of a symphony that had been playing my entire life. "You should have screamed at him," she insisted, her voice rising. "You should have thrown that beautiful gift at his feet and told him exactly what he is." "And then what?" I asked, finally turning to look at her, to let her see the strange, unnerving calm in my eyes. "I'd be the hysterical, jealous son. I'd be proving him right. They would have twisted it, made me the villain. No, yelling is their language. I'm done speaking it." I didn't know exactly what my new language would be, but I felt it in my bones. The rules of engagement had changed forever. As we drove, my mind did what it always did after one of these episodes of ritual humiliation. It retreated into the past, sifting through the archives of memory, looking for the origin of the wound. The memories weren't hard to find. They weren't subtle clues. They were giant, flashing billboards on the highway of my life, all pointing to this exact destination. I found myself on their roof 5 years earlier. A violent summer thunderstorm had ripped through the neighborhood, and a massive limb from the ancient oak tree in their backyard had punched a hole clean through the shingles and plywood. It was a gaping wound in the heart of my childhood home. I'd gotten the frantic call from my mother, Helen. My brother, Leo, naturally, was on a critical business trip in Miami. He was always on a critical trip when a crisis hit. His genius was in his impeccable timing for being absent. So, I took a week off from my real job, the one my father's friends always asked about with a hint of condescension. For 7 straight days, I was up on that roof from the moment the sun rose until it set. I'm not a professional roofer, but my grandfather, the man in the photograph now sitting on my back seat, had taught me how to work with my hands. I sweated through 2 shirts a day, my knuckles were scraped raw, and my back screamed with muscles I didn't know I had. I tore out the rotten wood, framed a new patch, laid the tar paper, and meticulously nailed down every shingle, making sure the lines were perfectly straight. By the end of the week, the hole was gone. The roof was whole again, stronger than before. I was at their kitchen table, nursing a lukewarm coffee, every muscle in my body humming with exhaustion, but also with a deep, quiet pride. I had fixed it. I had protected their home. My dad walked in from the garage. He didn't look at me. He glanced out the kitchen window. His eyes narrowed in scrutiny at my handiwork. He grunted. "I guess it'll hold," he said, his voice laced with skepticism. He opened the refrigerator, the door hiding his face. Leo's friend is a professional contractor. He would have used the architectural shingles. These look cheap. He emerged with a beer, twisted the cap off, and took a long drink. He finally looked at me, at my tar-stained hands and paint-spattered jeans. "Real gifts come in boxes, James. Not with sweat and dirt." I just sat there. The pride I'd felt moments before shriveled and died. I didn't say a word. I just nodded, finished my coffee, and went home. Then my mind jumped forward a few years, to the incident with the taxes. It was spring 2 years ago. My mother called me, her voice a panicked whisper. They'd received a certified letter from the IRS. It was thick, dense with threatening legal jargon about audits and penalties and liens. My mother was convinced they were going to lose the house. My father's method of handling the crisis was to yell at her for not keeping better records. Leo's contribution was a 2-word text message. "Sounds tough." I spent the next 3 weekends at their dining room table, a place I usually associated with tense holiday dinners. It was buried under a mountain of shoeboxes filled with faded receipts, disorganized bank statements, and years of tax forms. It was a chaotic paper trail of their financial life. Took me over 40 hours. I created spreadsheets. I cross-referenced every single deduction. I found the source of the problem. A series of innocent but significant errors in how they'd been calculating their property tax deductions for almost a decade. I sorted it all out. I filed the amended returns, and I wrote a clear, respectful, and detailed letter to the IRS explaining the situation, taking responsibility for the confusion. The result? They owed a small penalty, less than $1,000. A pittance compared to the catastrophic figures my mother had imagined. I walked them through the new, simple filing system I had created for them, with labeled folders and clear instructions. My mother hugged me, a quick, almost fleeting embrace. "Oh, thank you, sweetie. You're such a lifesaver." My father just nodded curtly and immediately changed the subject to the quarterback situation on his favorite football team. A week later, at a neighbor's barbecue, I was standing by the grill when I overheard my mother talking to Mrs. Henderson from across the street. "Oh, that whole IRS mess?" my mother said, letting out a light, airy laugh as if it were a silly anecdote. "It was nothing, really. Leo is so wonderful. He has a very influential friend who's a tax attorney. He just made one phone call and poof, fixed it all." I stood frozen, the tongs in my hand hovering over a sizzling burger. The lie was so effortless, so complete. In their retelling of our family history, I was not a character. I was a ghostwriter. My actions were real, but they were always attributed to someone else. And that led my memory to the most crucial moment of all, the one that was now burning a hole in my consciousness. It was about 18 months before the party. I had received an unexpected but significant bonus at work. Sarah and I were financially stable, but I worried constantly about my parents. They were getting older, and my dad had had a heart scare a few years back that had shaken us all. I went to their house on a Tuesday afternoon. I sat them both down in the living room, the one with the worn floral sofa and the faint smell of my mother's potpourri. I had a bank folder with me. "Mom, Dad," I began, trying to keep my tone light. "I want to help you guys set something up. A real safety net." I explained the idea of the online account, how it could be a tool for me to help them if they ever needed it. My dad was immediately suspicious. "We're not invalids, James. We don't need you snooping in our finances." "It's not snooping, Dad," I said patiently, keeping my voice even. "Think of it as a backup system. You'll have all the passwords. I'd only have access if you needed me to, say, pay a bill if you were in the hospital. It's for your convenience and my peace of mind." I remember telling them about a friend from work whose father had a stroke, and the family couldn't access his funds to pay for the specialized care. "I just don't want that to ever be us," I said. Reluctantly, they agreed. I walked them through the setup, writing down the passwords for them in the little address book my mom kept by the telephone. I made sure they understood they were in complete control. Then I took out the cashier's check. It was for a sum that represented years of careful saving on my part. I placed it on the coffee table between us. "I want to put this into a new, separate savings account for you," I explained, looking my father directly in the eye. "I want you to think of this as an emergency fund. For health emergencies only. If something happens, if you need a specialist, if you need the best care, I don't want you to hesitate for a second because of money. This is your health insurance. It's a safety net." My mother had tears in her eyes. My dad picked up the check. He stared at it for a long time. For a fleeting, hopeful second, I thought I saw a flicker of genuine gratitude. "Well, okay," he mumbled, his voice thick. "We'll probably never need it." Now, driving home from his 70th birthday party, that memory was no longer a comfort. It was a weapon being used against me. The safety net. The online account I hadn't looked at in over a year. The gleaming new SUV on the lawn. Leo's triumphant, smug face. A cold, sickening hypothesis began to form in my mind. A puzzle piece coated in filth sliding into place. No, they wouldn't. They couldn't. It was too monstrous. Could they? When we finally got home, Sarah, exhausted by the emotional toll of the day, went straight to bed. I couldn't rest. I sat in the dark of our living room for what felt like an eternity. The gift bag with the restored photograph lay on the floor by my chair. A gift of memory, of legacy, of love. Felt so naive, so pathetic compared to a car. But as the first hints of dawn began to paint the eastern sky, the leaden weight in my stomach wasn't just sadness anymore. It was something else entirely. It was the birth of a cold, hard resolve. I had to know the truth. I couldn't live another day in the suffocating darkness of their narrative, wondering if I was just a disappointment, or if I had been the biggest kind of fool. The old patterns were shattered. I wasn't going to swallow the pain this time. I was going to dissect it. The next morning, the sun rose on a world that felt fundamentally different. The familiar comfort of my home, the smell of brewing coffee, the quiet rhythm of a new day. It all felt like a thin veneer over a gaping chasm that had opened up beneath my feet. I was an actor going through the motions of a life that no longer felt entirely real. Sarah was still asleep. I was grateful for that. I needed to face this next step alone. My mind was a feverish hive of activity, replaying the party, the flashbacks, the drive home. But underneath the chaotic swarm of memories, one question buzzed with terrifying clarity. What did they do with the money? There was only one way to find the answer. I walked into my small home office, a room that had always been my sanctuary, filled with books and the quiet hum of my computer. Today, it felt like an interrogation room. I opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, the one filled with old warranties and obsolete instruction manuals. After a few minutes of rummaging, my fingers brushed against a small, spiral-bound notebook. I pulled it out. Inside, among old phone numbers and scribbled reminders, was a page with my dad's distinctive, slightly shaky handwriting. Bank login info. My heart began a heavy, frantic drum solo against my ribs. My mouth was dry. I sat down at my desk, my hands feeling clumsy and foreign as I typed the bank's web address into the browser. The login screen appeared, stark and impersonal. I typed in the username. I typed in the password. My fingers hovered over the enter key for what felt like a full minute. This was a Rubicon. To cross it was to admit that I believed my own family capable of the unthinkable. But they had pushed me to this bank. Their actions had led me to this shore. With a deep, shuddering breath, I clicked. The page loaded, displaying their main checking account. I scanned it quickly. The balance was low as usual. Weekly grocery bills, a pharmacy charge, the electric bill. Everything looked painfully normal. My heart sank a little. Was I wrong? Was I just being paranoid, the jealous son my father always claimed I was? Then I saw the tab at the top of the page. The one labeled Savings. My cursor trembled as I moved it over the word. I clicked. The screen refreshed, and the world stopped. Okay, pause. Are you guys feeling the dread creeping up your spine right now? Or is it just me? You give your parents an emergency fund out of pure love, and suddenly there's a brand new luxury SUV sitting on the lawn with a giant red bow? The math ain't matang, folks. I have a sick feeling in my gut about what James is about to see on that screen, and if it's what I think it is, this family is about to be absolutely obliterated. Let's see what the damage is. I felt the air rush out of my lungs in a silent gasp. My vision blurred for a second, the numbers on the screen swimming in a sea of white. I blinked hard, forcing them back into focus. But they didn't change. The balance was $117.34. My blood ran cold. I scrolled down, my hand shaking so much it was hard to control the mouse. I found the transaction history. There it was. The initial deposit from my cashier's check a year and a half ago. Then, a series of tiny interest deposits month after month. And then, 1 week ago, a single catastrophic transaction. A withdrawal. A massive one, for almost the entire amount I had deposited. It wasn't a series of smaller withdrawals. It was one clean, decisive act of plunder. My mind reeled. What for? Where did it go? I clicked on the transaction for more details. There wasn't much. Just a cryptic reference number and a transfer to a third-party financial institution I'd never heard of. Felt like a dead end. My frustration mounted. But then, as my eyes scanned the main dashboard again, I saw something new. Something that hadn't been there the last time I had helped them with an online bill payment over a year ago. It was a small, unassuming link in the Account Services menu. It said, "View loan documents." A wave of dread washed over me. With a click that felt both hesitant and inevitable, I opened it. The PDF document slowly rendered on my screen. It was a consumer loan agreement. And at the top, in stark, unforgiving digital print, were the words that would change my life forever. Borrower, David Miller. Collateral, savings account #XXXXXX. Loan purpose, automobile. I felt like I'd been kicked in the chest. Couldn't breathe. It wasn't a scam. It wasn't a hack. It was a plan. They had taken my emergency fund, my gift of life and health, and leveraged it as collateral to buy a luxury SUV. The car wasn't a gift from Leo. It was a monument to their betrayal, funded by me, and presented to the world as a tribute to their favored son. The cold resolve from the night before flooded back, chasing away the shock. My first instinct was to print everything. The savings account statement, the loan agreement, the transaction details. I needed a paper trail. I needed evidence. As the printer whirred to life, spitting out the proof of their deception, I knew my next move. A screaming match was pointless. Yelling was a release of emotion. I needed a strategy. I picked up my phone and dialed my dad's number. I took a few deep breaths, forcing my voice into a register of calm, measured concern. "Dad? It's James." "What is it now?" he grunted. His voice was thick with sleep and irritation. I was just helping a friend with some online banking stuff, and it got me thinking. I lied, the words tasting like poison. "I've been reading about these really sophisticated scams lately. They can mimic bank websites, get your information. I think you should check your accounts just to be safe. I'm a little worried." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. "Don't be ridiculous," he finally said. But his bluster had a new, tinny edge to it, the edge of fear. "Leo is very smart with all this computer stuff. He helps us. He would know if something was wrong." "I'm sure he would," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "But these scammers are professionals. It's better to be safe than sorry, Dad. Just take a look. For my peace of mind." "Whatever, James. I have a headache." "I'll look later," he snapped, and the line went dead. The bait was set. He would look, and when he saw the empty account, he wouldn't think of a scam. He would think of Leo, and he would panic. Now, for the other half of the conspiracy. I got in my car and started driving towards their house. The 20-minute drive felt like crossing a barren desert. My mind was a sandstorm of betrayal. It wasn't just my dad's monumental arrogance. It was my mother's silence. Her quiet, smiling complicity. She had watched me hand over that check. She knew what it was for, and she had let this happen. When I pulled up to their house, the first thing I noticed was the empty space on the front lawn. The grass was crushed where the massive SUV had been parked. The giant red bow, a symbol of their grand lie, lay on the ground like a discarded, faded memory. That was odd. Why was it gone already? I used my old key to let myself in. The house was quiet. My dad's car was in the driveway, but he was nowhere to be seen. I found my mother in the kitchen. She was standing at the sink, staring out the window at the empty bird feeder, her hands clutching a dish towel so tightly her knuckles were white. She looked pale, agitated, a ghost in her own home. "Mom!" She jumped, a small, startled gasp escaping her lips. "James! Good heavens, you scared me. What are you doing here?" "Where's the car, Mom?" I asked, my voice dangerously level. Her eyes darted away, refusing to meet mine. "Oh, there was a problem with the registration. A silly paperwork issue. They had to take it back to the dealership to sort it out. Leo is handling it. He's so good at those things." The lie was so practiced, so reflexive. I walked over to the polished kitchen table and placed the stack of papers I had printed on its surface. The bank statement. The loan agreement. "Is this the paperwork issue you're talking about, Mom?" She looked down at the papers. The color drained from her face. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a trapped, hunted expression. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The silence in the room was a physical presence, a weight pressing down on us. "I asked Dad to check his account," I said softly, my words falling like ice chips into the silence. "I told him I was worried he was scammed." I let that sentence hang in the air, a final lifeline I was throwing her. This was her last chance. Her last chance to choose the truth. To choose me. "James, please," she whispered, her voice trembling. Don't make this into a big deal. Your father was so happy." The condescension in her plea, the implication that I was the one making a scene, broke something inside me. A big deal. My voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the force of a lifetime of suppressed rage. "A big deal? My emergency fund for you. The money I gave you for a hospital bed, for a heart surgeon, for a crisis. It's gone. And it was used to buy a toy so Leo could look like a hero at a birthday party while Dad called me a disgrace. You don't think that's a big deal?" Tears began to stream down her face, the weapon of a professional victim. "We haven't seen him that happy in years, James. You don't understand." "Oh, I think I do," I said, and then I delivered the final, fatal question. "Did you help him, Mom?" She flinched, and then she gave me the answer that would incinerate the last vestiges of our relationship. "Leo just wanted his father to have one nice thing. He deserves it. Your father deserves to be proud." I had to help Leo get the account information. It was for your father. There it was, the confession, the justification, the twisted, enabling logic that had poisoned my entire life. She hadn't just allowed it to happen. She had been an active participant. She had held the ladder while Leo climbed through the window. I just stared at her, the woman who gave birth to me. In that moment, she was a stranger. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a frantic, insistent vibration. It was my dad. I ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. The storm had just made landfall. The winds were howling, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't running for cover. I was walking straight into the eye of it. I left my mother standing in her pristine kitchen, a statue of crumbling denial amidst the polished granite and stainless steel. I didn't say goodbye. There were no words left. The drive home was a study in transformation. The hot, swirling rage I'd felt on the way there had cooled and compressed into something hard, dense, and unyielding, like a diamond forged under immense pressure. I walked into my house to find Sarah waiting for me in the kitchen. She had a fresh cup of coffee in her hands, but she hadn't touched it. Her expression was etched with worry. She'd known where I was going. She knew what this confrontation meant. "What happened?" she asked, her voice quiet, her eyes searching mine for the aftermath of the explosion. I didn't answer right away. I walked over to our dining room table, the heart of our home, and I laid out the evidence. The printed bank statements, the loan agreement. It was the same evidence I had shown my mother. But here, in the warm light of my own home, it looked even more obscene. Sarah came over and looked down at the papers. I watched her read, her eyes moving quickly, her lips a thin, tight line. I saw the moment she understood. A sharp, angry intake of breath. She looked up at me, her beautiful face a mask of disbelief and righteous fury. "Oh, James. No, she didn't." "She did?" I said, my voice flat and devoid of the emotion that was churning inside me. She held the door open for him. They took the money, my gift, our future security blanket. Gone. We stood there in a pocket of silence, the ugly truth sitting on our table like a bomb. This was the point of no return. This was the ultimate betrayal, the kind of story you hear about other families, the kind you shake your head at and think, how could people be like that? Now we were those people. This was that story. Sarah was the first to move. She came around the table and wrapped her arms around me, holding me tight. For a moment, I allowed myself to lean into her, to feel her strength. But I couldn't soften. I felt like a man made of ice and steel. "What are you going to do?" she asked softly, her voice muffled against my shoulder. And that was the billion-dollar question, wasn't it? The old James, the one who existed just 2 days ago, would have caved. There would have been a terrible, screaming fight. Then my mother would have cried. My father would have blamed me for upsetting her. And eventually, I would have been manipulated into some kind of grudging forgiveness to keep the peace. The money would be gone, the resentment would fester inside me like a cancer, and the toxic cycle would continue. But the man holding the proof of their conspiracy in his hands wasn't the old James. I gently pulled away from her embrace so I could look her in the eyes. I needed her to see the change in me. "I'm going to expose it," I said, and the words felt like they were carved from stone. "All of it." I saw a flicker of something new in her eyes then. It wasn't disagreement. It was fear. Real, profound fear. This was uncharted territory for us. My wife, my rock, my unwavering ally, looked genuinely scared. "James, I love you, and I will support you, no matter what," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her hands found mine, her grip tight. "But I have to ask you, are you ready for this? I mean, really, truly ready? There is no coming back from this. This isn't just about winning an argument or getting the money back. This is about ending our relationship with your family. Forever. What if the shock of it gives your dad a heart attack? Can you live with that?" She had voiced the deepest, darkest fear I had been refusing to acknowledge. She was asking me to look past my righteous anger and stare into the abyss of the potential consequences. This wasn't a game. This was about detonating a bomb in the middle of our lives. I held her hands, my grip as tight as hers. "I know," I said, and my voice was steadier than I felt. "And it's a terrible thought, Sarah. But let me ask you this. What if I do nothing? What if I let them get away with this? What will that do to me? I'll be eaten alive from the inside out. And our relationship, ours and Lily's, will suffer because I'll be a shell of a man, filled with bitterness." I took a deep breath. The relationship they think we have is a lie. It's a performance. I show up, I take the insults, I do the unacknowledged work, and Leo gets the standing ovation. They don't respect me. They don't even see me. They see a tool they can use and a disappointment they can mock whenever they feel like it. I'm not destroying a relationship, Sarah. I'm just ending a lie. And if the truth gives my father a heart attack, then it's a sign that the lie was the only thing keeping him alive. A look of profound understanding, and then a fierce, burning pride washed over her face. The fear was gone, replaced by the resolve I loved so much. She nodded slowly. "Okay," she said, her voice firm. "Then we end the lie. What's the next step?" I had the conspiracy. I had the co-conspirators. But I still didn't have the motive. Not the real one. Why was Leo so desperate that he would risk torching his entire family for a quick payday from a used car? It was reckless, even for him. There had to be more to it. I needed the final, ugly piece of the puzzle, and I had a good idea of how to find it. A couple of days later, the invitation arrived via text message. An invite from my cousin, Daniel, for his daughter's high school graduation party that weekend. The whole extended family would be there. Normally, I would have deleted the message and invented a plausible excuse to get out of it. But this time it felt like a summons. An opportunity. I went alone. Sarah and I agreed it was better that way. This was a reconnaissance mission, and I needed to be able to move freely without worrying about her. The party was in full swing when I arrived. It was the same crowd, the same conversations, the same suburban tableau. I saw my parents across the yard, huddled with a few of my father's old cronies. My dad shot me a look of pure venom. My mother refused to meet my gaze, her face a portrait of shame and anxiety. They didn't approach me. Good. I found Leo holding court by the beer cooler, laughing a little too loudly, slapping people on the back, playing the part of the carefree bon vivant. He was a born performer. He saw me, and for a split second, his smile tightened, a flicker of panic in his eyes before he masked it. "James," he boomed, his voice dripping with false cheer. "Big brother, glad you could make it. Hey, no hard feelings about the other day, right? You know how Dad gets when he's had a few." "It's water under the bridge, Leo," I said, my voice just as fake and pleasant as his. "All good." I didn't linger. I just needed to establish my presence and then fade into the background. I grabbed a beer I had no intention of drinking and found a spot on the edge of the patio, pretending to be absorbed in a conversation with an uncle I barely knew. But my attention was focused entirely on Leo. He was a bundle of nervous energy. He couldn't stand still. He kept checking his phone, a nervous tick. After about 20 minutes of his loud performance, he broke away from the group he was entertaining, his phone pressed to his ear. He walked quickly toward the side of the house, away from the noise of the party, seeking privacy. This was my chance. I followed at a distance, using the growing twilight and a row of large azalea bushes as cover. I got close enough to hear his voice, a low, angry, desperate hiss. "Mark, I told you I just need a few more days. You have to give me more time," he whispered frantically into the phone. He paused, listening, his body tense. "What do you mean you're done waiting? The plan was solid. I get the loan, I flip the car for cash, and I pay you back. It's not my fault the damn dealership repossessed it so fast. Their financing wasn't approved. Some crap like that." There was another, longer pause. I saw Leo's face, pale and slick with sweat in the dim glow of the porch light. "No, don't you dare call my dad. He'll kill me. He has no idea. Just give me until Tuesday. I'll get the money. I'll get it from somewhere. I swear." He hung up, his hand shaking so violently he almost dropped the phone. The club, of course. The Oak Valley Country Club. My family's high temple of appearances. The place they went to perform their roles as upstanding members of the community. It was a stage built of manicured lawns, overpriced salads, and hushed, judgmental whispers. It was the most public place she could have chosen. It was perfect. "That's a very thoughtful idea, Aunt Carol," I said, my voice a placid lake betraying nothing of the tidal wave building beneath the surface. "Sarah and I will be there." Sunday dawned bright and beautiful. A perfect, sunny afternoon that felt like a deliberate mockery of the Category 5 hurricane I was about to unleash. Sarah and I drove to the club in silence. She was wearing a simple, elegant blue dress, a splash of color and calm in a world of turmoil. I was in a navy blazer and gray slacks. We looked the part. As we walked through the grand entrance, Sarah gave my hand a quick, firm squeeze. "Ready?" she whispered. "I am," I said, and I was. The nervous energy had vanished, replaced by a singular, sharp focus. They were already seated at a large round table in the center of the ornate dining room. It was a prime spot designed to be seen. My father, David, sat at the head of the table like a king on a throne, his expression a thunderous mixture of impatience and indignation. My mother, Helen, looked like a wilted flower, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy, her hands twisting a napkin in her lap. Leo was attempting to look relaxed, but he couldn't stop drumming his fingers on the table, a frantic rhythm of pure anxiety. And in the middle of them all sat Aunt Carol, beaming like the self-appointed savior of our broken family. We sat down. The silence at the table was a physical thing, thick and heavy with unspoken accusations. Aunt Carol, ever the director, clapped her hands together with a brittle, theatrical sound. Wonderful! We're all here. Now, I know there have been some hurt feelings, some misunderstandings, but we are a family, and families forgive. I decided to cut right through the scripted nonsense. Thank you for arranging this, Aunt Carol, I said, my voice calm but carrying an authority that made everyone at the table turn to look at me. I'm glad we're all here to be completely honest with each other. I reached into the inside pocket of my blazer and pulled out a thin manila folder. I placed it on the center of the table with a soft, definitive thud that seemed to echo in the sudden quiet. Because I also have something I'd like to clear up, I continued, my eyes sweeping across their faces. My father's jaw tightened. James, don't you start. This is not the time or the place. On the contrary, Dad, I said, my voice still level. I think this is the perfect time and place. I opened the folder. I slid the first document, the savings account statement, across the polished wood of the table. I'd like to talk about your birthday gift, the car. Leo let out a short, nervous laugh. Oh, for God's sake, are we still on about that? It was a gift, James. A grand gesture. You should try it sometime. Get over it. Was it a gift, Leo? I asked, my gaze locking onto his. Then perhaps you can explain this. This is the statement from the savings account I set up for Mom and Dad a year and a half ago. The emergency fund. As you can see, the entire amount was withdrawn 5 days before the party. My mother let out a small, strangled gasp, putting a hand to her mouth. My father picked up the paper, his brow furrowed in a mixture of confusion and dawning suspicion. He looked at Leo. I didn't give Leo a chance to answer. I slid out the second document, the loan agreement, and this is where the money went. It was used as the down payment and collateral for a car loan. A loan taken out in Dad's name, for a car you claimed was a gift from you. So, you see, the car wasn't a gift from you, Leo. It was a gift from me, stolen, repackaged, and presented with a lie. Leo's face had gone a sickly shade of gray. That's not true, he stammered. You're making this up. You're twisting things. Am I? I turned my gaze to my mother, her face a crumpled mess of tears. Mom, you admitted it to me in your kitchen. You told me you helped him. You said Dad deserved it. Helen burst into loud, theatrical sobs. I just wanted him to be happy. You never make him happy. My father finally seemed to grasp the full scope of the deception. He looked from the damning papers, to his weeping wife, to his pale-faced, favorite son. The arrogance on his face curdled into a dark, volcanic rage. But it wasn't directed at Leo. It was directed at me. He slammed his fist on the table, the force of the blow making the silverware jump and clatter. How dare you? He roared. His voice so loud that conversations at surrounding tables instantly ceased. The entire dining room was now our audience. You come in here with your pathetic, little forged papers and you try to ruin your brother. You have always been jealous of him. Always a bitter, second-rate disappointment. He struggled to his feet, his face a mottled, terrifying shade of purple, pointing a trembling finger at me. He gave me a car, a real gift. What did you give me? A worthless photograph. You are nothing. The entire room was watching us, a tableau of silent, horrified witnesses. This was the moment, the peak of his delusion, the final, desperate defense of the lie he had built his entire identity around. And then, through the thick, ringing silence, a new voice cut through the tension, calm and clear. James. Just the man I wanted to see. I looked up. Standing by our table, looking bemused by the scene, was Mr. Thompson, the CEO of my company. A man my father had bragged about me working for, but had never bothered to meet. He was a prominent member of the club, a fact I had known, a variable I had wagered on. He was dressed in golf attire, looking relaxed and utterly in command. He either didn't notice the family drama unfolding or, more likely, chose to ignore it with the practiced ease of the truly powerful. He smiled warmly and extended his hand. I stood up and shook it, my own hand surprisingly steady. "Mr. Thompson, a pleasure to see you, sir." "You too, James," he said, clapping me warmly on the shoulder. "Listen, I'm glad I ran into you. I just came from a board meeting this morning. That new project you spearheaded, the one you rescued from the brink, is a massive success. The board was blown away. They've unanimously approved your promotion to vice president, of course. That was a given." He lowered his voice slightly, but it was still perfectly audible to everyone at our silent, shattered table. "But more than that, they wanted me to pass on their admiration for how you did it. The way you handled that negotiation with the Weston Group with absolute integrity, even when it meant a smaller short-term gain for a better long-term partnership. That's what this company is all about. That's why we value you, James. Your character is your greatest asset." He shook my hand again, a firm, decisive shake. "Congratulations. It is thoroughly well-deserved. We'll make the official announcement tomorrow." He nodded politely to the rest of the stunned, silent table and walked away, leaving a crater in his wake. I slowly sat back down. The silence that followed was absolute, profound. The public validation, the praise from a man my father respected, the acknowledgement of the very quality my father had spent a lifetime denying I possessed, integrity, had shattered his reality more effectively than any document or accusation ever could. I looked at my father. The apoplectic rage was gone, vanished. The purple color had drained from his face, leaving it a pasty, slack-jawed gray. His mouth was slightly open, as if he wanted to speak but had forgotten how. The finger that had been pointing at me in accusation just moments before now hung limply at his side. For the first time in my 48 years of life, my father looked utterly and completely small. The moments after Mr. Thompson's departure were surreal. Time seemed to warp, stretching and slowing down. The ambient noise of the dining room, the clinking of glasses, the murmur of distant conversations, sounded like it was coming from another planet. At our table, a nuclear winter had set in. The silence was a physical entity, heavy and suffocating. My father remained in his chair, a statue carved from regret. He had sunk back down after Mr. Thompson left, not with a thud, but with a slow, tired deflation, like an old building collapsing in on itself. He stared at the pristine white tablecloth. His eyes glazed over, seeing a landscape of ruin that only he could perceive. Leo was the first to break the spell. He started to stammer, his carefully constructed facade of the charming, successful son cracking and falling away to reveal the terrified, inadequate man beneath. It wasn't supposed to be like this," he choked out, his eyes darting wildly around the table, searching for an ally, for anyone who would help him glue his shattered world back together. He looked at my mother, but she was lost in her own tears. He looked at Aunt Carol, but she was looking at him with an expression of pure, unadulterated disgust, as if he were a stain on her reputation. He found no help. But the final, crushing blow for my brother didn't come from anyone at our table. "Leo." The voice was as sharp and cold as a shard of ice. A man had materialized beside our table, as if summoned by the stench of desperation. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, but his eyes were flat and hard, like a shark's. It had to be Mark, the creditor from the phone call. I realized with a jolt that he must have been sitting somewhere in the dining room the whole time, watching the drama unfold. Leo flinched as if he'd been physically struck. He visibly shrank in his chair. "Mark," he whispered, his voice barely audible. What are you doing here?" My Sunday lunch was interrupted by your family's little theatrical production, Mark said, his voice a low, menacing purr that didn't carry beyond our table but was all the more terrifying for its intimacy. He barely glanced at the rest of us. His entire predatory focus was on my brother. My patience, as you know, has run out. Your deadline was Tuesday. Your little car-flipping scheme has, quite spectacularly, failed. So you and I are going to go have a talk. About my money. Now. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't make a threat. He didn't have to. He gestured with his head toward the exit, a small, almost imperceptible jerk. It was an order, not a suggestion. Leo looked like a cornered rat. He shot one last, desperate, pleading glance at my father. A silent cry for help from the golden child to his lifelong protector. But David didn't even look up. He was gone, adrift in the wreckage of his own pride. Leo understood then that he was completely and utterly alone. Defeated, he slowly pushed his chair back, the legs scraping loudly against the floor. He rose, his shoulders slumped, and followed Mark out of the dining room, a man walking to his own public execution. The golden child's shine had been permanently, irrevocably extinguished. Wow. Just wow. I need to take a breath. The sheer audacity of his mom crying about how James never makes his dad happy, while she literally held the ladder for Leo to steal his money? Insane. And Mr. Thompson stepping in like an absolute boss? That was movie-level timing. But the fallout isn't over yet. We still have to see how James handles the ashes of his so-called family. Grab some popcorn because this ending is an absolute masterclass in walking away. Now only my mother was left. Her sobs had subsided into quiet, hitched breaths. She looked at me, her face a crumpled, tear-streaked mess of regret and abject desperation. She reached a trembling hand across the vast, empty expanse of the table. "James," she whispered, her voice cracking with a pain that, for the first time, felt genuine. "Please, don't do this to us. Don't leave us. We're family." Family. That word. For my entire life, they had wielded that word like a weapon. It was a shield they used to deflect accountability for their cruelty. It was a chain they used to keep me bound to my designated role in their dysfunctional drama. Hearing it now, in this moment of total devastation, felt like the ultimate grotesque irony. I looked at my mother, at the woman who had chosen her favored son over her honorable one, who had chosen a comfortable lie over a difficult truth. I didn't feel the hot rage of before. I just felt a deep, weary sadness for the mother I had always wished for but never had. I did not take her outstretched hand. "Family doesn't do this to each other, Mom," I said, and my voice was quiet, but it held the firmness of a mountain. "They don't steal from each other. They don't lie to each other. They don't systematically build one son up by relentlessly tearing the other one down." Whatever this was, I gestured to our broken table, a battlefield of shattered relationships. It wasn't a family, not for a very long time. Sarah stood up, a graceful, silent signal that our part in this play was over. I stood with her. I pulled my wallet from my pocket, took out two $50 bills, and placed them carefully on the table to cover our untouched meals. Clean break. No debts owed, emotional or financial. My father still hadn't moved. He was a monument to his own folly. Aunt Carol was already on her phone, her back to us, no doubt crafting a carefully edited version of events to salvage her social standing among the club members who had witnessed our family's implosion. As we turned to leave, I took one last look at my mother. I wanted to feel something, pity, maybe, or a final surge of anger. But I felt nothing, just a profound emptiness, a quiet, somber release. Sarah took my hand, and her touch grounded me. We walked out of the Oak Valley Country Club, leaving the wreckage of my old life smoldering behind us. The sun was still shining brightly, but for me the world looked different, sharper, clearer. I wasn't walking away from a family. I was walking toward myself, and I did not look back. The 6 months that followed the showdown at the country club were the quietest, calmest, and most profoundly peaceful of my adult life. It was like living in the aftermath of a hurricane. The destructive winds had ceased, the torrential rain had stopped, and what was left behind wasn't devastation, but a landscape scrubbed clean, with open air and a sky that seemed bigger and bluer than before. The silence was the most noticeable change. The phone no longer felt like an enemy. There were no more weekly guilt trip calls from my mother, her voice laced with passive-aggressive disappointment. There were no more last-minute, demanding calls for help from my father, assuming I would drop everything to fix his latest self-inflicted problem. There was no more walking on eggshells, no more mentally preparing myself for the next casual insult disguised as a joke. There was just silence. And in that silence, I began to hear my own voice for the first time in a long time. I threw myself into my new role as vice president at work. It wasn't an escape. It was an affirmation. The corner office with the panoramic view of the city was nice, but the real change was internal. For the first time, I felt like I was in the right place, valued for the right reasons. My ideas were listened to. My strategies were implemented. My colleagues treated me with a new level of respect. The quiet competence my family had always dismissed as a lack of ambition was seen here for what it was: a strength. The respect I had spent a lifetime craving from my father, I was now receiving daily from people I respected in turn. And I realized a fundamental truth: respect that is freely given is infinitely more valuable than approval that is constantly begged for. My life at home, the life that truly mattered, underwent a quiet, beautiful transformation. The constant, low-grade stress I had carried for years, the weight of my family's dysfunction, was gone. I hadn't realized how heavy it was until it was lifted. I was lighter. I was more present. I was a better husband and a better father. I started leaving work at 5 o'clock every day. Sarah and I would cook dinner together, laughing over a glass of wine. We talked about our days, our dreams, the small, silly things. We were reconnecting in a way we hadn't been able to in years, because the ghost of my family was no longer sitting at our table with us. My relationship with my 10-year-old daughter, Lily, blossomed. I had always loved her fiercely, but now I had the emotional bandwidth to truly engage with her. We built a ridiculously complicated, multi-story birdhouse for the backyard. It ended up being a little crooked, but it was ours. We worked on her science fair project, a volcano that actually erupted, and filled the kitchen with the smell of vinegar and baking soda. I coached her soccer team. One Saturday afternoon, at a game, I watched another father patiently tying his son's shoelaces on the sidelines, and I felt a pang. But it wasn't the old pang of sadness for the father I never had. It was a new feeling, a quiet, profound sense of peace, because I realized my family was right here, on this soccer field, in my heart. It was Sarah and Lily. My family was a choice, not an obligation. About 8 months after that fateful Sunday lunch, a letter arrived in the mail. It was a simple, plain white envelope, but I recognized the spidery, slightly shaky handwriting on the front immediately. It was from my father. My body had a visceral reaction. My stomach clenched. My first instinct was to tear it in half unopened. My second was to throw it into the fireplace. I held the letter in my hand for a long time, the paper feeling impossibly heavy, a vessel containing a lifetime of unspoken history. Sarah saw me standing in the hallway, staring at it. She came over and gently put a hand on my arm, her touch a silent question. She didn't say a word. She knew this was a decision only I could make. With a deep breath that did little to calm my racing heart, I walked into my office and slit the envelope open with a letter opener. The note inside was short, written on a single piece of plain notebook paper. It wasn't eloquent. It wasn't a grand, sweeping apology. It was clumsy, broken, and full of a raw, unvarnished pain. And for that reason, it was the most honest thing he had ever communicated to me. "James," it began, "I don't know what to say. It's quiet here now. Helen cries all the time. She says the house feels empty. We don't hear from Leo much. He lost his job at the car dealership. He lives in a small apartment across town. That man, Mark, he took most of his money. Sometimes I see the car that Mark drives now. The SUV. It's a nice car. The things I said to you at the party and at the club, they were wrong. I know that now. I have been thinking about it every day. When your boss came to the table, he said you had integrity. I didn't really know what that meant. I was so angry, I didn't want to hear it. But later, I looked it up in a dictionary. It said it was about being honest and having strong moral principles. All those years, you were fixing my roof, doing my taxes, giving us that money. You were showing me what it was, and I didn't see it. I was a blind fool. I am sorry. I don't say it well, but I am. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I know. That I read the letter once, then twice, then a third time. A storm of conflicting emotions swirled inside me. There was a part of me, the wounded 10-year-old boy, that felt a flicker of vindication. But there was also a profound sadness for the decades we had lost, for the father-son relationship we could have had but never did. I didn't feel the urge to call him. I didn't feel the need to respond. The letter wasn't a request for forgiveness. It was a confession. I folded it neatly, walked over to my desk, and placed it in the bottom drawer, underneath a stack of old tax returns. I closed the drawer with a soft, final click. The power dynamic had shifted forever. I was in control of my own peace now, and I would be the one to decide if and when that drawer would ever be opened again. The final test of my new freedom came a month later. My phone rang, displaying a number I hadn't seen in nearly a year. Aunt Carol. A grim curiosity made me answer. James, darling. Her voice was back to its familiar, syrupy sweet tone, as if the scene at the country club had been nothing but a bad dream. Guess what? Your cousin Jessica is getting married. Isn't it just wonderful news? The whole family will be there, of course. I was just on the phone with the wedding planner, and I told her we need a big round table for all of us, right at the front. It will be the perfect opportunity for everyone to, reconnect. To show everyone that we're still a strong, united family, despite our little ups and downs. And there it was, the motive laid bare. It was never about us. It was never about healing or forgiveness. It was about public relations, about what the neighbors and the other relatives would think. She wasn't trying to mend a family. She was trying to stage a photo opportunity. I smiled, a real, genuine, liberated smile. That's wonderful news for Jessica. Aunt Carol, I said, my voice polite, warm, and cheerful. Please send her our love and best wishes. But Sarah, Lily, and I won't be able to make it. There was a stunned, sputtering silence on the other end of the line. But you have to. It's a family wedding. What will people think? Honestly, Carol, I said, and the words were the easiest, lightest I'd ever spoken. I couldn't care less. You have a good day now. I ended the call before she could formulate a response. I felt a click, not just from the phone disconnecting, but deep inside my soul. The final, toxic tie had been severed. The performance was officially, finally, over. Tonight, I'm sitting in my living room. A soft rain is tapping against the window pane. The house is quiet. Sarah is upstairs reading a novel, and Lily is asleep, dreaming whatever wonderful dreams 10-year-old girls dream. Through the window, I can see the birdhouse we built together, a dark, familiar silhouette against the evening sky. Still a little crooked, but it's sturdy, it's filled with life, and it's ours. My mind finds its way back to that day at the country club, not with the old, familiar sting of anger or pain, but with a strange, quiet detachment, like watching a pivotal scene from a movie about someone else's life. I think about the man I was before that day, the one who would have absorbed that public humiliation like a sponge, gone home, and let it curdle into a silent, corrosive resentment. The man who measured his own worth by the distorted, funhouse mirror reflection he saw in his father's eyes. I barely recognize that man anymore. He seems like a well-meaning but hopelessly lost stranger. For so many years, I believed that winning meant finally earning my father's approval. I operated under the delusion that if I just worked a little harder, was a little more helpful, was a little more good, then one day he would finally turn to me and say the words I craved like a man dying of thirst. Well done, son. I'm proud of you. I see now that I was chasing a ghost. I was trying to get water from a dry well. The victory wasn't in hearing those words from him. The victory was in the profound, earth-shattering realization that I didn't need to hear them anymore. My worth was never his to give, so it was never his to take away. My father's letter, his clumsy, broken apology, is still sitting in the bottom drawer of my desk. Maybe one day I'll take it out again. Maybe I'll call him. Not because he is my father and I am his son, but because he is a lonely old man consumed by regret, and I might have enough peace in my own heart to offer him a small piece of it. Or maybe I won't. And that's the point. The choice is finally completely mine. The power to engage or to remain silent is mine. That, I've learned, is the ultimate freedom. I didn't win by getting revenge. The sight of my brother's downfall and my father's disgrace didn't bring me joy. It just brought a quiet, somber sense of closure. I didn't win by destroying them. I won by refusing to be destroyed. I won by choosing myself. I won by building a life where my value is determined not by the people who gave me life, but by the life and love I give to my wife, to my daughter, and ultimately to myself. It's a life built on a foundation of quiet integrity, on showing up for the people who truly matter, and on the simple, profound peace that comes from knowing, deep in your bones, that you are enough. Man, I need a minute. Exhales loudly. That was intense. Honestly, part of me was cheering when Mr. Thompson dropped the hammer, but another part of me is just heartbroken for James. You spend your whole life trying to get water from a dry well, and your reward is having your emergency fund weaponized against you. It's a brutal reminder that DNA doesn't make a family. Respect and loyalty do. James played this perfectly. No screaming match, no stooping to their level. Just facts, documents, and an absolute mic drop at the Oak Valley Country Club. Alright, let's see what the Reddit jury had to say about this mess. Because the comments on this thread were absolutely on fire. Here's one from user Toxic Family Survivor 99. Bro, the second they touched that emergency fund, it became a felony. Forget the country club humiliation. I would have called the cops and pressed charges for wire fraud. Your parents are absolute trash and Leo is a literal deadbeat. Change your locks, freeze your credit just in case they have your SSN, and never look back. Go full NC immediately. You know what? Toxic Family Survivor 99 is not wrong. Taking that money under false pretenses is straight-up financial abuse, even if the parents were in on it to fund the golden child. I'm actually surprised James didn't get lawyers involved, but honestly, dropping the truth bomb and walking away probably gave him more peace of mind than years of legal battles. Still, freezing the credit is top-tier advice. You never know what a desperate guy like Leo will do with a stolen social security number. Let's read another one. This one's from Burnt Toast and Trauma. Man, this hit way too close to home. My mom did the exact same shit with my college fund to bail my older brother out of his gambling debt. Then gaslit me saying family helps family. Therapy saved my life. I haven't spoken to them in 8 years and my credit score is finally above 750. Stay strong, OP. The trash literally took itself out. Damn. I am so sorry you had to go through that. Burnt Toast. It is terrifyingly common how toxic parents will cannibalize the responsible kid to protect the reckless one. Family helps family is the ultimate gaslighting phrase used by abusers to dodge accountability. I'm glad you got therapy and protected your peace. And your credit score. Alright, we got one last comment and this one is a bit spicy. User SkepticEye44 says, y'all are eating this up but something feels off. Like OP just magically had the CEO of his company walk by right as the dad was yelling? And a loan shark just waltzed into an exclusive country club dining room? Come on. Plus, who gives their parents an emergency fund and just doesn't check the bank account for 18 months? OP sounds like he's leaving out major context to sound like a saint. Ooh, Skeptic Eye playing the devil's advocate. Okay, I hear you. The timing was definitely cinematic. But honestly, strange things happen in small affluent towns where everyone goes to the same country club. As for not checking the account for 18 months, if you genuinely trust your parents and set it up as a break glass in case of emergency fund, you aren't going to be hawking over their statements every week. You assume they have the basic human decency not to commit fraud against their own son. I think James was just incredibly naive because he desperately wanted to believe his parents were good people. What do you guys think? Was the country club confrontation a masterstroke? Or did James let them off too easy by not pressing charges for the stolen money? If you were in his shoes, would you ever open that bottom desk drawer and call your dad back? Or is that bridge burned to ashes? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one of them. If you enjoyed this story and want more daily Reddit drama, do me a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. Until next time, I'm Dom. Keep your boundaries strong, and I'll see you in the next video.